It's the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Pires coming to you from Baltimore. Wisconsin court documents that should have been destroyed were leaked to The Guardian this week. The documents show how corporations and billionaires provided Governor Scott Walker with at least $12 million in undisclosed donations to fight off his recall referendum in 2011. Back then, Governor Walker faced a tough recall vote because of his attack on the Wisconsin Public Employees Union, which led a massive protest and a month-long occupation at the state legislature. Joining us now from Madison, Wisconsin to take a closer look at this story is Matt Rothschild. He is the executive director of the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign. For 2 decades before that, he was editor and publisher of the Progressive magazine. Good to have you with us, Matt.
Oh, my pleasure, Sharmini. Thanks for having me on.
Matt, the documents that The Guardian released was ordered destroyed by the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Why were they ordered to be destroyed?
Really good question. And we're delighted to see those emails because we never thought they'd see the light of day because, yes, you're right, the Wisconsin Supreme Court ordered them destroyed. I can't remember a case of potential public malfeasance where the files were supposed to be destroyed. It was an outrageous order from the Wisconsin Supreme Court. They put a stay on that order so that an appeal could be made to the U.S. Supreme Court. But one reason I think they wanted to destroy the records was because they're embarrassing. They're embarrassing to Scott Walker, who they are allied with ideologically. 5 out of the 7 justices on the Wisconsin Supreme Court are conservative. Many of those justices, in fact, benefited by $8 million in expenditures from the very groups that were under investigation by this John Doe prosecutor.
Explain that. How were the judges involved in this?
So the conservative justices benefited from $8 million in expenditures in so-called issue advocacy by Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce and Wisconsin Club for Growth. They would run ads in support of these justices when the justices were running for the top spot on the Wisconsin bench. These are elected positions here in Wisconsin. And so they benefited from this money from these same groups that were being investigated by the prosecutor in this case. So that's one reason they might have wanted to see those documents destroyed.
Now, if you were a journalist covering the occupation of the state legislature and all of what was going on at the time, which was very heightened in the U.S., you know, lots of media were on it, you could see that Governor Scott Walker's comeback was really magnificent, his return and then winning the referendum. We, of course, didn't know he had $12 million backing him at the time. Describe for us, just take us back, describe for us what happened and what were the key moments when things turned around.
Well, the defeat by the forces of good here, or the defeat of the forces of good here in Wisconsin, it was kind of a crushing blow for all of us when Walker won the recall. Remember, Walker had rammed through a law that stripped public sector workers of most of their collective bargaining rights, and he did a lot of other bad things on the policy level. And so there was this massive recall effort. 1 million people signed a petition to recall Scott Walker, and he only won the first time around with 1.6 million votes or something like that. So we all thought with 1 million signatures on these petitions, he could be defeated. But he has a base of support here. Wisconsin's kind of schizophrenic. There is a right-wing base here. And he also had access, we didn't know how much access until yesterday, but he had access to just tons and tons of money from rich multi-millionaires, billionaires on the right, corporate executives. And what these documents show is he just spent most of 18 months, you know, running around the country, sitting on the laps of millionaires and billionaires and begging them for money. But not money directly to his recall election campaign, but to a third-party group. It was a laundry operation to this third-party group called the Wisconsin Club for Growth. And then that Wisconsin Club for Growth sprinkled the money to other groups, and these other groups would run the ads that Walker himself and the Walker campaign were supervising.
And how is it that these donations were kept secret for so long?
Well, this is the essential problem with dark money in American politics. You can give undisclosed, unlimited amounts of money to third-party groups because of the Citizens United decision of 2010. But you can't give unlimited, undisclosed, you're not supposed to anyway, amounts of money to third-party groups if those third-party groups are coordinating with a candidate. And that is the heart of the debate going on right now with the appeal of the Wisconsin Supreme Court decision to the U.S. Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court has to decide whether it's going to take the case or not.
Right. And what is it that we know at this point about Scott Walker's connection to the club that received the money?
Well, his connection is just about as intimate as it can be. Scott Walker's chief political strategist, a guy named R.J. Johnson, was also head of Wisconsin Club for Growth. And R.J. Johnson was working with Scott Walker to line up millionaires and billionaires to give money to Wisconsin Club for Growth, which would then give it to other groups that would then run ads in support of Scott Walker. So Walker doesn't have an arm's length distance here. He doesn't have a fingernail's distance between himself and Wisconsin Club for Growth right now.
And so in your opinion, is this a result of Citizens United?
Well, part of it is, I mean, Citizens United let dark money just run rampant in American politics and in Wisconsin politics. But this was even a violation of Citizens United because there was coordination going on between the outside groups and the candidate.
And so what next? What is your organization planning to do about all of this?
Well, a couple things. We've got our fingers crossed the Wisconsin Supreme Court will take the case, that the U.S. Supreme Court will take the case and overturn the Wisconsin Supreme Court decision. We're praying for that, if we pray. And secondly, we're considering filing complaints against some of these outside groups, which may have been stretching the legal boundaries of what they could do under the IRS. We're considering filing complaints against some of these companies that seem to be giving directly, even on company checks, money to political groups that are coordinating with candidates. That's unkosher, we think. So we're looking at all the angles right now.
Scott, so who's involved in taking this up to the Supreme Court?
Well, it's an interesting question because the person who should be appealing it was the special prosecutor. But he was fired by the corrupt Wisconsin Supreme Court because he was doing his job and he was on the heels of a lot of the buddies of the Wisconsin Supreme Court, Scott Walker, and some of these right-wing groups that were under investigation. They were tied closely to the Wisconsin Supreme Court, so they got rid of the special prosecutor, and then there was no one for the time being to appeal the decision, so they invited 3 district attorneys in Wisconsin who had been peripherally involved in the case to join the case if they wanted to, and they did join the case, and they are the ones who have filed this appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court.
And that's coming up on the 26th of September.
Correct. I believe the U.S. Supreme Court is going to hear the question as to whether they should take the case on September 26th, and then we should find out, I believe sometime in October, whether they're going to take it or not, and I sure hope they do take it.
And in the meantime, I hope the documents are sealed and secured in London.
Yeah, and I hope they won't squeal, because I know the Attorney General here in the state of Wisconsin is trying to find out who dared leak these emails. I mean, they still want those emails to be secret, but thank God for the Guardian and getting these leaks and these emails out there.
All right, Matt, I thank you so much for joining us, and we would really appreciate it if you would keep us abreast and report back on what's happening.
Anytime, my pleasure.
Thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.